我哋就有夠法定。
Good morning. It's time and we have a quorum. Let's invite the administration in. Today we have Professor Sophia Chan, Undersecretary for Food and Health, and her team. At the council meeting yesterday, we have extended the scrutiny period to the 14th of June. And the deadline for making notices for amendments would be the 7th of June. Before the meeting, we received amendment suggestions from Dr. Junius Ho and Mr. Peter Shiu. If members have any committee stage amendments, please submit them to us as soon as possible. And at the meetings on the 16th and 23rd of May and the relevant core matters, we are looking at CB brackets 2 1443/1617 brackets 01 and CB brackets 2 1494/1617 brackets 01. The administration would provide a written response at the meeting. We have a few papers tabled by the administration just now, so they would address them in a moment. And yesterday, Mr. Shukafai sent in a letter on the tobacco control measures, and he requested a response from the administration, and it has also been tabled. And I will also invite Professor Chan to walk us through the response. We received two papers earlier, one from the British American Tobacco Company and the Tobacco Association, and they have also been tabled. They hope the government can provide a response in a meeting today. So I will leave it to the administration to decide whether to give a written or oral response. So I will hand over to Professor Chan on members' questions and the two letters received. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I will follow up on the questions. At the meetings on the 16th and 23rd of May, there are relevant issues and follow-up proposals. Some amendments have been proposed by members. As for certain technical issues at our meeting on the 6th of May, for example, for the soft packs, right now there are transparent seals. So this is a technical issue that can be overcome. We have heard views from members. So we are studying whether transparent seals can be applied to cigarette packs, and we have to look at the legal feasibility. We are now working hard on this front. As for the adjustment period or the adaptation period, some members said that the 12-month period has incorporated the scrutiny period, and they hope that there would be 12 months after gazettal. So we will consider these views. If there's a genuine need for adaptation. As for the health warnings, we have explained in our paper that the different positioning of health warning images, and the details are in Annex A. I will invite the Tobacco Control Office to give more. And at the meeting on the 16th of May, some members asked about the sale of cigars. And depending on the actual case or circumstances, if multiple cigars are displayed in a retail container that bears a health warning in the prescribed form and manner, it would be seen to fulfill the requirement of the Smoking Public Health Ordinance Cap 371. So it's not necessary to put up warnings for each cigar. And Dr. Junius Ho suggested that the maximum coverage at the back and front of the container from 85% to 70% respectively, and the original requirement of 170% coverage at the back and front respectively to 70%. And the WHO has appealed to all countries to prepare for adoption of plain packaging. So a number of countries have adopted or are working to adopt plain packaging. As for the current proposal of 85% coverage, we have considered the local situation as well as stakeholders' views. The public has high expectations on more effective tobacco control and the need for more effective health warnings. As such, we find the current 85% requirement pragmatic and appropriate. At our meeting on the 23rd of May, members requested certain statistics from the government, and the relevant information are listed in Annex B of our paper. So we would like to see if members have other questions for today.
Okay, so I will clarify that the adaptation period will be after Gazette, so it will be till the end of next year. So there will be 12 months for adaptation, right? Well, perhaps I could defer to Ms. Yoon. Thank you, Chairman. All along, the adaptation period will start from the date of Gazette, and for the Smoking Public Health Notices Amendment Order was gazetted on April 21st. The effective date is set at October 21st, but it is stated that after October 21st there would still be a 6-month grace period when both the old and new packages can be accepted. And by April 21st of 2018, then this order will be in total effect. So from the date of a gazette, there will be 12 months. I would like to remind all of you that in accordance with 83A, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the item, please declare interest before you speak. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, please. Thank you, Chairman. I understand the need for tobacco control as it relates to the public health in Hong Kong, although I myself am a smoker. I would like the chairman or the legal advisor to clarify one thing, as I see on the internet that there are some organizations that said that I am an advisor for one organization in relation to tobacco, and so I am not supposed to sit on this subcommittee. I just feel strange because I work for import and export industry, and So I don't understand why I'm not suitable to sit on this subcommittee. I also have a technical concern. For every 10 packs of cigarettes, it will become 1 stick. And there should also be health warnings on the stick itself. But up till now, the administration is not able to provide the health warning image for the stick packaging to the industry. So some members of the industry thought that it would just be prolonging the image on the pack to become the stick image, but that would look very strange. And so that is a technical issue that I hope you would able to resolve. Will the administration provide the image for the health warning for the stick that consists of 10 packets? Thank you. So first of all, for the pecuniary interest, so we would look into the rules and procedures. If there is direct or indirect pecuniary interest to the item, then there would be a need to declare interest. As long as you declare interest, as the chairman has reminded before you speak, then that would already be in accordance with the rules of procedures. Well, the legal advisor has been very clear. Well, Mr. Wong, as long as there is no direct or indirect pecuniary interest, then you have already done your part in declaring interest, and that would not affect any person's eligibility to sit on the subcommittee. For the landscape layout of the stick packaging, I want to know whether this is part of the illustrations, or would there be a more clear illustrations for the industry to use. Dr. Lee, we understand that it is technically difficult to try to extend the pack image onto the landscape image. So this is an example. Well, if the image is not distorted, then we can accept it. For example, if you can take a look at the 2 images in my hands, we have actually extended the original image from the pack. So there might be a slight distortion, but the health warnings and images could still be seen clearly. We understand the industry might want a better illustration. We would see whether anything could be done. Thank you. Can you actually pass us the samples? And can you provide us with papers on the confirmed images for the retail containers? And have you already set or confirmed your images? We have already confirmed the 10 images, and they have already been gazetted as well. So the 12 health warnings, we have already sent out CDs with images to the industry. Therefore, the industry can use the soft copy to print out the health warnings for the cigarette packs. Oh, Dr. Lee, you can see there picture 1, 2, 3 are actually like extended images, and picture 4 and 5 you actually use the same image, but you use 2 of those images to cover the retail pack. I'm sure there would be many questions from the industry as well. Do you already have samples for the industry? Would those samples be all the images that can be used? My understanding is that they want to comply with the law. If you do not have a clear guideline, then they might accidentally fall into traps of not complying with the law. So can you, or can they actually send out some of the images used to the Tobacco Control Office and see whether those could be used? Thank you, Chairman, for your recommendation. We have set a hotline for the industry, and they can call us for inquiries. We have already received many inquiries, and we provide support to the best ability. For the container for the 10 packs of cigarettes, for the stick of cigarettes, as Mr. Wong said, then they would need a longer image. And actually the 12 images can actually all be a bit extended to slight distortion. But we have tried all the images. Even though the images are extended slightly, you can still see the images clearly. But if the industry wants a rectangular shaped image, then we can perhaps look into it and explore options of coming up with other images as well. I have a follow-up question because I have to attend another meeting. All right, I have seen this sample. I think it looks very strange in this distortion because the warning is not clear. Well, I'm holding the sample you provided. Look at it. You said so you said smoking will cause impotency. But you know, I can't really see from this image the clear health warning. You can't just extend the image and pretend that it will solve the problem. I think you should look into coming up with a better and clearer health warning. You can't just extend or pull the image. This doesn't show anything. It doesn't show reality because it's all distorted. It's weird. It's not ugly. It's just very strange. Well, you can all see that. Look at the other one. You are actually distorting the figures of the people on the warning. Look at this. It's like you're standing in... No, it doesn't look like real people at all. And it's all stretched out. It looks hilarious. hope you would provide the industry with acceptable images, because we might become a laughing stock if the industry prints out such distorted images. Mr. Chiu Ka-fei, thank you, Chairman. Well, I welcome an extended adaptation period. And Chairman, you said that you're going to extend the date for notices. When is the date? Oh, you mean the date when it takes effect? Professor Chen said that it remains unchanged at April 21st. Mr. Xiu, we have heard your concerns, and on the May 23rd meeting, many people objected to our discussions during or after this has become gazetted. Well, we have heard comments that maybe the date should be extended by 2 months. Well, if we need to re-gazette the images, then we would still count 12 months for the date of gazette, so that you wouldn't think that the discussion has been eating into our effective date. Thank you. I welcome this. Thank you for considering this so that it could be fair to everyone. You're now thinking of ways how to provide better images for the soft packs. Would you be able to deal with this before we move CSAs at the council meeting? Mr. Xiu, for the CEOs, we have heard many comments. On one hand, we would like to reiterate that there's still transparent seals that some tobacco companies have come up with, but other members from the industry felt that they wanted to work on non-transparent seals. There are still many details that we need to fine-tune, because right now the legislation states that that if it's transparent, then it wouldn't considered as being covered.
我哋要喺嗰度呢，係睇下點樣樣。
We need to see how we go about the issue. We hope that these technical issues can be overcome so that there won't be so many CSAs. Mr. Xiu, I welcome the response, and hopefully it can be tackled as soon as possible. The purpose of the seal is not to make the warning graphics smaller. That's not the intention. However, but in terms of the packaging, that having a seal is necessary. Well, a very big tobacco company has already implemented it. As to whether whether the company can continue to manufacture cigarettes locally, and it all has to do with the seal. Do I still have time? Mrs. I know you have a lot of things to say, so please continue. We have been talking about cigars, and some practitioners told us that it's not feasible, or there's nothing they can do in terms of the counterfeit labels proposed by the government. They feel that the counterfeit labels might be covered. Is there any way the size of the warnings can be further adjusted? Professor Chen. We are aware of such views. As we have said before, we hope that the trade can do something in terms of the 70% coverage, and the Tobacco Control Office will offer help as needed. As to the 100% coverage proposal, as we said last time, it might be technically challenging. We are not selectively enforcing the law, and we have already sought legal advice. As long as nothing is intentionally done to void the requirement, we would not casually take out charges against different parties. That's something we have explained last time, and we find this pragmatic. Any prosecution figures? No, we never had any prosecutions. Dr. Fernando Chang. Thank you. We mentioned the plain packaging proposal. There is a big debate on the 85% requirement, and some people propose 70, some propose 65. Some countries have already adopted it, and 14 countries are legislating for plain packaging. So what is the government's stance? Last time our legal advisor said they would conduct some studies, so I would like to see whether there's any update. Undersecretary, thank you. On plain packaging, we are aware of the global trends. The WHO recommends that the bigger these warnings, the better, and they should be updated regularly, and that would help decrease the smoking prevalence and change people's smoking habits. So this is a global trend we will certainly observe, and we will see what we can do. We introduced the 50% requirement in 2007. We did not enlarge the warnings over the past 10 years. And it has been 2 years since we enlarged the requirement to 85%. And it has yet to be implemented. So we would like to review the matter to see how effective the enlargement is before we consider our next step. We will continue to keep tabs on global trends on plain packaging and graphic health warnings. The second question, was that a question for the legal advisor? I think both parties can offer a response. For the long title of the order, I wonder whether it would affect the CSAs I submit. Who can take that question from DOJ? Let me repeat the question. Dr. Fernando Chang is considering submitting a CSA to increase the coverage of the health warning from 85% to 100. In other words, adopting plain packaging. Technically, is that possible? Legal advisor. Ms. Poon, this order is a piece of subsidiary legislation instead of a bill. That's why it doesn't carry a long title. This our subsidiary legislation is bounded by Cap 34, the IGCO, and it would be done by way of a resolution, and amendments must fulfill the contents of the order. If the subject matter is not covered by the subsidiary legislation, then Cap 34 might not cover such amendments. There's another approach. We can choose for an amendment to the laws instead of a CSA. Can the legal advisor give us more details, please? The amendment is on the Smoking Public Health Notices Amendment Order. So this is about the requirements on health warnings. As for the plain packaging, I tend to agree with the DOJ. That the amendment order might not cover such amendment. We might have to amend the main legislation instead. So Dr. Cheung can consider amending the main legislation instead of filing a committee stage amendment. Perhaps for this technical issue, Dr. Cheung can talk to our legal advisor and DOJ. It's technically feasible, but you may not file a CSA. You have to amend the main legislation. Is that the correct interpretation? Yes, correct. The subsidiary legislation is empowered by Cap 18 of the main legislation, which stipulates that the order can prescribe the nicotine content and prescribed forms. And the subsidiary legislation does not empower the Secretary to do anything outside of the scope. We have received amendments from members, for example, by lowering the coverage from 85 to 75 or below. If you increase it to 99.9 or 99%, we can still comply with the long title. Is that correct? Some amendments have already been tabled to amend the coverage ratio. Some people propose 75% or other ratios, and some members want to enlarge the graphic warnings to 99% or beyond. Can our legal advisor or DOJ shed more light on that? Do they are they compatible with our long title? For the examples you mentioned, if the coverage of the health warnings is to be amended, this is covered in the amendment order. And this is something which could be amended under the amendment order. All right, so after the meeting, perhaps our legal advisor can talk to Dr. Chang to achieve your objective. This is a drawn-out process. We have spent 2 years to go from 50 to 85%, and we might have to wait another year. The government is extending the adaptation period from 6 months to 12 months. In other words, after the amendment order is passed, it won't be commenced until another 12 months. So we are talking about a total of at least 3 years since the order was first discussed at LESCO. We have spent 3 years to enlarge the graphic health warnings, and the increase is just 35%. But the global trend is to adopt plain packaging. By the time we are done, we would be overtaken by other companies. I think plain packaging is the answer. Perhaps our legal advisor can talk to Dr. Chang after the meeting. Next, Mr. Jeremy Tam. Thank you. Mr. Peter Shiu and Dr. Junius Ho filed some amendments. I think for soft packs, I would not support the amendments. As for cigars, I have something to say about the 100% coverage requirement. But the amendment serves to decrease the coverage from 100 to 70%. Well, that was not my intention at all. I just want to give more leeway to the 100% requirement. For small deviations, they are acceptable. We are talking about at least 1,000 different containers, and it's cumbersome to come up with different labels. I think 90% would be adequate because it looks almost like plain packaging.
So previously, I have also moved a motion to reduce it to 90% and not like these two colleagues to reduce it to 75% or 65%. Well, but if the administration is willing to reduce it to a minimal level, maybe to 90%, just to deal with the technical issues, to actually allow the industry to allay some of the technical issues, then it would be much better. So I don't think there is a need to make changes to the images on the cigarette packs. But for the cigar boxes, I do believe that there should be a slight reduction in coverage to allow some leeway for the industry. So I think that Doctor's whole amendment is way too much. Mr. Tam, well, I think some members have asked the same questions, and I have given the response that we have considered these comments and views, but we have discussed with the DOJ on the concerns of 100% coverage. There have been no prosecutions in the past, and if companies are not knowingly violating the legislation, and the DOJ would consider each case individually and would not prosecute those who are unknowingly violating the legislation. Well, if there are no other comments, then we can move to examining the provisions and to go to the clause-by-clause scrutiny. Or are we looking at the English version or the Chinese version? Chinese version, please. Ms. Yun. First is the effective date, and we have already set it to be from October 21st. And so this is actually 6 months from the date of the Gazette on April 21st of this year. Although this is a negative vetting, we have set the Gazette date and we have also added in 6 months of adaptation period. So from the date of Gazette, there would be actually a full adaptation period of 12 months altogether. Any questions? All right, let us continue. You can look. We are going to consider the amendment, and we have also considered the English version, and now we're using notice right now, but we are going to change it to prescribed information in the future, because we are talking about the information on the packets. So we have made this change in text. Deputy Secretary, we see now that we need to also we need to refer to the paper. So can you tell us which page you're on for CB bracket 2 1340167 bracket 2? 1340 stroke 1617 bracket 02.
哦，咁佢個改嗰個 version 有冇？
好，咁啊，繼續啊，副秘書長。
其實我哋跟住嘅改動咧，就係會係呢個第。
We're now going to look at 3. Health warning and indication of tar and nicotine yields on packet or retail container of containers. So we have a subsection 2 to 7, and we have suggested to delete section 2 to 7, and we would have new sections from bracket 2 to 8. So have added in bracket 2 to 8, subsection 2 all the way to subsection 8. So each packet and each container must bear a health warning and an indication of tar and nicotine yields. So the main change is changing it from 50% to 85%. And we have also fine-tuned the subsections to set out the images, and that it must be in one of the forms prescribed in the schedule. It must appear on 2 largest services of each packet and of each container. And the 2 services must bear a Chinese version and English version. So there have been no changes to this. So the main change is actually at the drafting. And the main change is that the warning must cover at least 85% of the area of the service. So you mean that you have taken out some of the subsections and put in new subsections. So members can refer to paper number CB bracket 2 1340 stroke 16 to 17 bracket 02 page 0002. So we can follow this order now. It's much clearer if we can refer to the page number. So we are now moving on to 4.
係咪4？
冇。
我哋未到。好啊。好啊。法律顧問呢就喺有關於第
Regarding 9, the legal advisor would like the administration to clarify. If I can refer you to 3 subsection 9. So this is the health warning and indication of tar and nicotine yields may appear on a label securely affixed to a packet or retail container. And there are sub A and sub B. I see that compared to the deleted subsection 3 bracket 8, so you have added in the word or in between bracket A and bracket B. So can you clarify the meaning that if you adhere to A, then there is no need to seek the approval of the Commissioner of Customs and Excise? Well, so that is 0004 of our paper. So the word or is the packet or container is made of metal or is a plastic drum. that if it adheres to bracket A, then it doesn't need to seek approval from the Commissioner of Customs and Excise to the affixing of the label to the packet. Dr. Lee, please. Let me try to explain. Under Cap 3 of the Smoking Public Health Order, in between A and B, we have tried to understand this from the Customs and Excise Department. So as long as you comply with either A or B, then they would approve it. So that is the reason why we have included the term "or" this time. So in other words, in future, you don't necessarily have to seek the approval of the Commissioner of Customs and Excise. All right, thank you. If you have no questions regarding Section 3, then let's move on to Section 4A, health warning on retail container of cigar, pipe tobacco, or cigarette tobacco other than retail container containing one cigar. The existing subsection 2 to 8 will be deleted, being replaced by the new subsections 2 to 10. Each container must bear a health warning. The health warning must be printed on the containers. The health warning must also comply with the following requirements. It must be in one of the forms prescribed in Part 2 of the schedule. It must appear on the 2 largest surfaces of each container. It is also made clear that if a container has more than 2 largest surfaces, the warning must appear on any 2 of those surfaces. If appearing on a retail container of cigars, the warning must also comply with subparagraph bracket 5. Subparagraph 5 states that the Chinese version of the warning must appear on the largest surface on the front of the container and must cover at least 70% of the area of the surface, and the English version of the same warning must appear on the largest surface on the back of the container and must cover 100% of the area of that surface. If appearing on a retail container of pipe tobacco or cigarette tobacco, the warning must also comply with subparagraph 6, which states that the 2 surfaces bearing the warning must bear the Chinese version and English version, and each version must cover at least 85% of the area.
And if the container takes the shape of a cylindrical drum, and the Chinese version of the warning must cover at least 85% of the area of the surface, and for the English version, it must appear on the top surface of the little drum and cover at least 50% of the area of the surface. And there are also requirements on cigars and other pipe tobacco, and the warning must appear during any continuous period of 24 months. Please continue. If we have no questions from members, we can continue to subparagraph 9.
秘書長呢度有個我都有個提問。
I have a question. For the requirement on retail containers of cigars, pipe tobacco, and cigarette or cigarette tobacco, the Chinese and English do not seem consistent. For the Chinese, it says 80%. For the English, 70%. and I'm referring to the retail containers. As for subparagraph 7, the Chinese version says 85%, but the English version is 50%. What is the justification for the differences in the Chinese and English versions of the warning? Dr. Lee? In page 0006, subparagraph 5, the Chinese version of the warning is 70%, and the English version of the same warning must cover 100% of the area. And in subparagraph 7, on subparagraphs 4, 5, and 6, if a container is in the shape of a cylindrical drum, the Chinese version of the warning must cover at least 85%, but the English version only has to cover at least 50% of the area of the service. Thank you. Let me try to explain the differences. First of all, subparagraph 5. It refers to packaging of cigars. We require 100% coverage on one side, and this is on the retail containers of cigars. As for subparagraph 7, if a container is in the shape of a cylindrical drum, just like cylindrical drums for cigarettes, the coverage must be 85% of the area of the service and 50% of the other side. So we're talking about two different types of packaging. For cigar containers, for the English version of the warning, the requirement is 100%, but for the English version, you only talked about 50% coverage. There is a difference in the Chinese and English warnings. So does it reflect your consideration on the potential uses? Dr. Lee? Thank you. Our original proposal is to specify 85% for the curved service and the top service, but the trade that it might be difficult to achieve 85% on the service. So that's why we retain the 50% requirement. Deputy Secretary, the Hong Kong market is predominantly Chinese. Despite the differences in the percentages of the Chinese and English warnings, for the cylindrical service, we opted for Chinese, and for the lid of the service, or for the service, we adopted English. So for the main service, we chose Chinese, and at the back, we chose English. That's why they might appear to be inconsistent on both the two different services. All right, please continue. Next. Section 4AA on the health warning on retail container containing one cigar, and we will repeal subparagraph 2 to 6 to be replaced by new subparagraphs. As for the health warnings, the sizes have not changed. Since we have new prescribed forms, they must be used. And the language would be unified with other parts. Earlier today, the Undersecretary said that there is no prescription on containers containing one cigar, but now there are requirements on single cigars in a container. So for people selling single cigars in a container, would the treatments or requirements be different? The law requires retail containers to be used for all tobacco products, and the containers must carry health warnings. For cigars, in the amendment order of subsidiary legislation, we are talking about individually packaged cigars. So that's why we are referring to health warning on retail container containing one cigar. In the meeting last time, we talked about cigars from the same container sold separately. They might be stored together with other cigars. If the cigar container contains a health warning, it would be accepted. In other words, sometimes cigars within a container would be kept in separate cylinders. Well, we are referring to cigars sold separately. Last time we talked about a container which carries a health warning already. All right, any questions from members? If not, please continue. And paragraph 5A. And these are textual amendments. The original 3A is amended to Part 3A. And the phrase "shall be of a size that covers" will be changed to the phrase "must cover." Any questions from members on this part? If not, let's move on. And paragraph 8, the amendment is similar. Part 6 would be changed from Roman numeral to a number. Transitional provision of the amendment order. The amendment's date would be the 21st of October this year. We will also provide a transitional period dating 6 months from the commencement date. During this period, the existing health warnings can be used together with the new health warnings. Please continue. And the schedule. We have changed the forms of the health warnings, and Part 2 lists out the Chinese and English versions of the 12 prescribed forms. Mr. Wong is not here because, or else he might have something to say. And there are also prescriptions on the font size, printing requirements, etc. Any questions from members on the graphic health warnings and the Chinese and English fonts, etc.? I have a question. For the cigarette sticks, the fonts are very clear, but for the cigarette packages, should we enlarge the Chinese fonts to facilitate smokers of different ages? For example, for older smokers, the fonts might be too small. I don't know why you chose this font. Why don't you go for bigger fonts? Please quit for your future generation. Why don't you make it larger? the graphic makes up 85% of the area, but the fonts are very small. Would the government consider bigger fonts to enhance the deterrent effect? Dr. Lee, when we design these graphics, for each graphic and font, we considered their sizes. The bigger the fonts, the public might find it easier to read them. But if the fonts are too big, they might cover the graphics behind. For example, if the fonts here are too small, the lady's eyes might or face might be covered. That's why we find this layout most appropriate. Well, if we do amend the graphics later, we might consider whether the fonts have to be further enlarged. Another technical issue. For the line, quit smoking for future generations, would you try to make them stand out even more? For example, you can adopt a red font with blood dripping. Would you consider that? Can you specify that in the amendment order? Under Secretary. Dr. Lee. When we design the health warnings, we also considered the font color. Since the background color or graphics for each warning is different, if we use red fonts, they might clash with the background. That's why we do not want the font colors or size to clash with their background. So we have adopted outlined fonts. And we have made multiple experiments, and we find this most effective. But we will consider that when we amend the graphics again next time. If not, let's move on. And Part 2A, the 12 prescribed forms of cylindrical containers. The final part is on the specifications.
似乎都冇問題嚇。
係跟住第二步 B 咧就係作。
And Part 2B are the prescribed forms on cigar containers.
And then there are also the specifications listed. So there are specifications of the font because this is stated very clearly that the width and the length are 7 centimeters and 3 centimeters respectively. And then for other specifications on characters and letters and remain the same. I have some questions for the administration. The width 7 centimeter and the length 3 centimeter. Would those cover most of the cigars on the market? Let's say, what about the very smaller cigars like this? And how about for the larger cigars? Would the specifications be too small? Thank you, Chairman. We have not made any changes to the specifications. This is a 1 cigar container in my hand. For single cigars sold, mostly this would be the main specification. So we have considered this specification. So no new changes have been made. It all remains the same. The only changes remain with the image, right? Yes. All right. No questions. And Part 2C, forms of indication of tar and nicotine eagles on packet. of cigarettes or retail container of cigarette packs. So we have listed out the specifications of the font and font size and font. And so the font size should not be less than 8 point and it should be clearly visible. Ms. Yun. Well, our numbering, we use Roman numerals before and now we have changed it to Arabic numerals, but the content remains the same. So this relates to 3A. Well, it seems that there are no questions, right? So we have smoothly scrutinized it clause by clause. And now we only have some of the CSAs we received from Mr. Junius Ho and Mr. Silkafai. So I would like to ask Mr. Silkafai to explain your CSA, but I have to remind you that we do not have enough people to vote on it right now. Perhaps Mr. Xiu can introduce his CSAs, and if we want to discuss together with members, then we would need to notify members. We have completed with our CSA, and the next step would be moving CSAs. So we can do that in one go because other members might wish to also look at the CSAs. Would that be all right with you, Mr. Shiu? Yes, I would go through these very quickly. So mainly there are four. First, the government wants to increase the image from 50% to 85%, but in the USA, they do not have this requirement. And then for the EU, it's only required 65% because there are many patents, and anything over 65% would cover all the patents. And due to those reasons, the EU believes that 65% would already be a good enough warning. As I've always stated, increasing it to 85% doesn't really reduce the number of smokers. So I don't think there is a need to increase it to 85%. 65% would suffice. Second amendment on the packets. You need the seal, otherwise the cigarettes would fall out. And administration is afraid that the seal would cover the health warning. The industry only wants to ensure that cigarettes do not fall out. So I hope that for the soft packet seals, there could be a waiver. Third, on cigars. We have discussed this for quite a long time. In other countries, cigar warnings would differ from cigarette warnings. Some of the warnings would be very small. Even for countries with cigarette packet warnings to 80%, the cigar warning would only be to around 30%, because a large health warning would cover the seal and also to ensure authenticity of the cigars. The last one would be on the transitional period. I think that 6 months is not enough. It should at least be maybe 10 months or 12 months. suggested 12 months. I hope that the transition period could really be extended from 6 months to 12 months. Would the administration like to respond, especially to the Fourth Amendment? I think that Mr. Shiu's understanding is a bit different from what Professor Chen said. Yes, you're talking about the transitional period, right? Yes. For the transitional period, Mr. Shiu and the industry felt that 12 months would be better. Many of them are of the view that 6 months is not enough. But if from the day of Gazette to the commencement day, 6 months seem not to be enough because we spent some time doing that for discussion. So we're talking about a gap of 2 months. Therefore, we believe that if the industry hopes that there would be 12 months to enlarge the health warnings, if we are to make new changes, then we would need to gazette it again. So maybe we could give a 12-month transitional period starting from the day of the new gazette. So we are willing to compromise on this. For the other amendments proposed by Mr. Shiu, one in relation to the sizes of health warnings, we have drawn reference from different countries. The EU has also proposed a plain packaging. Our images in Hong Kong have not been enlarged for over 10 years. And we are trying to strike a balance between smokers and non-smokers. Therefore, we believe that 85% is a pragmatic approach. Many people suggested plain packaging. But that means the industry will not even have the remaining 15% to present its logo, because the packaging would be entirely plain. Therefore, we believe that 85% is appropriate at this time. Although some tobacco companies use transparent seals, we've heard the views that some smaller companies may not be able to produce such seals. The current legislation specifies that the seal should not be covered, and that health warning should not be covered. Therefore, we will need to look into how we're able to do that. We understand there is certain difficulty, and we are working towards it. We hope we'll be able to fine-tune the details as soon as possible. We hope we'll be able to come to a consensus on the technical issues and accept our pragmatic approach. Professor Chen, on June 7th, all notice would have to be submitted by then. Well, do you have any update on the Gazette and the provisional period? And would there be any further amendments made to the packets? Because that would affect members proposing CSAs. So to be fair, I think you should give us the updates as soon as possible. we understand the Secretariat and we have set a meeting on June 2nd. And we would prepare all the details with the DOJ and present them by June 2nd. So there would be some changes made before June 2nd and also to the provisional period, Mr. Shiu. So maybe that would address some of your concerns. We're not sure how many more meetings we have. I think we're able to hold a meeting on June 2nd. And there would also be a meeting after June 2nd. So administration will come back to us on June 2nd on the amendments, and then there would be a meeting for us to discuss the CSAs. And members will need to discuss and vote on the CSAs. June 7th is our deadline, so we really do have to consider the time. We can only estimate that our meeting will be held on June 2nd, and it is unknown whether we'll be able to hold a meeting after June 2nd. So please take note of the dates. A suggestion would be to first move your CSAs, and maybe for some of the concerns that have been resolved, maybe you can take back your CSAs too. So our time is really very tight. You can see that we really don't have much time left, and meetings are held simultaneously now every day. I hope that the administration can try to find a balance, because if it can be acceptable, then of course I wouldn't move any or propose any CSAs. So what would you like? How would you like to handle this, Mr. Shiu? Well, I would first submit my CSAs. So are you submitting them on behalf of yourself or on behalf of the subcommittee? On behalf of the subcommittee. Any other questions or comments? If not, our next meeting will be at 8:30 on June 2nd. So I look forward to the new amendments made by the government. And if you have CSAs, please submit them as soon as possible. We have 2 views given to us by the tobacco companies. I hope that the administration will respond to those questions by June 2nd as well. Thank you.